The Senate will come to order, and I ask everyone present to please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In the absence of clergy, let us bow our heads in a moment of silent reflection or prayer. Reading of the Journal.
In Senate, Tuesday, January 31st, 2023, Senate met pursuant to adjournment. The Journal of Monday, January 30th, 2023 was read and approved. On motion, the Senate adjourned.
Without objection, the Journal stands approved as read. Presentation of petitions. Messages from the Assembly. The Secretary will read.
Senator Mayer moves to discharge from the Committee on Rules Assembly Bill number 626A, substituted for the identical Senate Bill 828A, third reading count of 37. Senator Palumbo moves to discharge from the Committee on Rules Assembly Bill number 601, substituted for the identical Senate Bill 1339, third reading count of 107. Senator Parker moves to discharge from the Committee on Rules Assembly Bill number 998, substituted for the identical Senate Bill 1344, third reading count of 112. Senator Skoufis moves to discharge from the Committee on Rules Assembly Bill number 613, substituted for the identical Senate Bill 1354, third reading count of 121. Senator Scarcella Spanton moves to discharge from the Committee on Investigations, Government Operations, Assembly Bill number 609, substituted for the identical Senate Bill 2223, third reading count of 160. Senator Martinez moves to discharge from the Committee on Rules, Assembly Bill number 986, substituted for the identical Senate Bill 2224, third reading count of 161. Senator Thomas moves to discharge from the Committee on Rules, Assembly Bill number 1008, substituted for the identical Senate Bill 2232, third reading count of 169.
So ordered. Messages from the Governor. Reports of standing committees. Reports of select committees. Communications and reports from state officers. Motions and resolutions. Senator Gianaris.
Mr. President, first of all, welcome to your first day of presiding over
you.
the Senate. Pleasure to have you in that role. We're going to begin by taking up the non-controversial calendar. Then we have a couple of resolutions after that before we move on to any debates. So let's take up the calendar, please.
The Secretary will read.
Calendar number 37, Assembly number 626A by Assemblymember Otis, enact to amend the executive law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act to take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of the law 2022.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Gianaris, Kruger, Ort, Stewart, Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 50.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 41, Senate Print 832 by Senator Bridgeport, enact to amend the public health law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act to take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of the law 2022.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Gianaris, Kruger, Ort, Stewart, Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 41, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Borrello, Griffo, Lanza, Oberacker, O'Mara, Ort, Steck, and Walczyk. Ayes 40. Also Senator Gallivan. Ayes 41, nays 9.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 107, Assembly number 601 by Assemblymember Thiel, enact to amend the chapter of the law 2022.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act to take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of the laws 2022.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Gianaris, Kruger, Ort, Stewart, Cousins, White.
Announce the results. Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 601, voted in the negative, Senator Skoufis. Ayes 49, nays 1.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 112, Assembly number 998 by Assemblymember Rosenthal, an act to amend the Public Service Law and the General Business Law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 50.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 118, Senate Print 1350 by Senator Rivera, an act to amend the insurance law.
Read the last section.
Section 5, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 50.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 120, Senate Print 1353 by Senator Brisport, an act to amend the social services law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of the law 2022.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White. Yes. Okay.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 120, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Morello, Canzoneri Fitzpatrick, Gallivan, Griffo, Hellman, Lanza, Matera, Murray, Oberacker, O'Mara, Ort, Palumbo, Rhodes, Rollison, Steck, Tedisco, Walzick, Weber, and White. Ayes 33, nays 19.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 121, Assembly number 613 by Assemblymember Gunther, an act in relation to requiring monthly status reports of community investments.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of the law 2022.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 52.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 159, Senate Print 2222 by Senator Harkam, an act to amend the environmental conservation law.
Lay it aside.
Calendar number 160, Assembly number 609 by Assemblymember Dinowitz, an act to amend the executive law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of the law 2022.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White. Got it.
Announce the results.
Ayes 55.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 161, Assembly number 986 by Assemblymember Sage, an act to amend the public service law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White. Got it.
Announce the results.
Ayes 58.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 169, Assembly number 1008 by Assemblymember Ra. Oh.
The bill will be laid aside for the day. Senator Serrano, that completes the reading of today's calendar.
Return to motions and resolutions. Please take up previously adopted Resolution 314 by Leader Stewart Cousins. Read the resolution title only and recognize Senator Parker on the resolution.
The Secretary will read.
Senate Resolution 314 by Senator Stuart Cousins, memorializing Governor Kathy Hochul to proclaim February 2023 as Black History Month in the state of New York.
Senator Parker on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the resolution, as we all know, today is the first day of February, marking the beginning of Black History Month. And just happy to be able to speak on this resolution brought forward by our leader, Andrea Stewart Cousins. Black History Month is obviously personal to me, not just because I happen to be African American, if I'm not sure if anybody noticed in the room, but May of this year will mark 30 years that I've actually been teaching Africana studies in various CUNY and SUNY universities across our great state. And I really want to shout out Dr. Regine Latatu, who actually gave me my first opportunity at Brooklyn College to teach Africana studies. And this month is important because African American history is part of American history. And that's one of the things that we really should all understand. That this becomes a time for us to look at the particular achievements and the contributions of African Americans in our society. First thing we should understand is that those contributions don't just begin in 1619 when the first ships arrived here with African people who were in bondage, right? The history of African people starts much further than that, right? In fact, they're the first people, right? When you look at not just the first, people of our kind, right? But you look at the very first person, right? They call her Alice. I don't know if her name was actually Alice, even if she was in East Africa, but they call her Alice, found on the African continent, right? And so when we look at human civilization and the development of all of the things that we think about, math, arts, sciences, politics, cuisines, language, all develop on the African continent, right? And so the notion that black people have come to this place, tabula rasa, or as a blank slate, is just patently wrong, right? In fact, just the opposite. People from the African continent were brought to America exactly because they had skills, exactly because they understood things about agriculture, right? And obviously, chattel enslavement was a dark part of the history of African people, but a darker part for the history of this country and the world. African American history started here in the United States, but now is actually celebrated in various forms across the world, including Ireland and England that have their own African American History Month, which they celebrate in October, right? But various countries, including Canada, Germany, and countries on the African continent also celebrate this month. It becomes important for us to kind of understand the history of the history, right? Or we say in academia, historiography, right? That this month didn't come out of nowhere. And I actually like my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to note that as a kind of formal dynamic, it actually first got celebrated by Republican President Gerald Ford in 1976 during the bicentennial, in which he encouraged Americans to learn more about African Americans during this time. And that became the kind of official kickoff in this country of African American history being kind of as we call it now, a thing, right? But it begins really with Negro History Month in 1926 with Carter G. Woodson, right? Now, a lot of people don't know who Carter G. Woodson is. If you do know, most of the time he's known for writing Miseducation of the Negro, which is a good read. People should check it out, particularly those who are interested in education. But he gets left behind. Everybody knows W.E.B. Du Bois, right? First African-American graduate from Harvard, right? Carter G. Woodson was the second. And they both got PhDs, right? And what I always say that's interesting about Carter G. Woodson is that he was a teacher. He wasn't a college professor. He wasn't like, an endowed chair somewhere. He was an everyday PS 193 teacher, right? Obviously in a black school. How amazing would it be if all of our teachers had PhDs from Harvard, right? Well, I'll take a PhD from University of Albany. Like I'll take it where we can get it. But that's the kind of education that he provided. And he saw that there was a lack of access to the history of African Americans in his classroom and in the curriculum that he was being given to teach. And so he actually created an organization on the study and advancement of Negro history. And out of that, he started Negro History Week. And it was actually began the second week in February because that week is the week that both Lincoln and Frederick Douglass are both born that week, right? And so at that time, going back to 1926, two of the kind of giants in terms of both the abolition of enslavement, but also advancing the rights of African Americans, right? And so during this month, I want to encourage us all to be focused a little bit more on the history of African Americans and to understand that history to be a broad history. And that includes people from the Caribbean, like, Marcus Garvey, who created the largest organization of black people in the entire world, back in 1924, right? The Universal Negro Improvement Association. You don't have the Harlem Renaissance without Garvey, right? It's much of Garvey's work that becomes the precursor to what we understand in terms of the Harlem Renaissance. Garvey is somebody who created the first black church, right? First black denomination was created by Garvey. One of the first black newspapers, Black Star News, was created by Garvey. Garvey is the predecessor of black nationalism, the idea of self-help, and the idea that African Americans can work socially with the larger society, but they should work economically with the larger society, but socially they should build their own in order to be kind of equal footing. You see that idea played out in other organizations, but you see it also academically within the context of Black Power if you read that book by Charles V. Hamilton and Stokely Carmichael, right? This notion that we have to get our act together before we can work with other people, right? But it is. I should have worn one today. I didn't. I wasn't thinking. We have bow tie Tuesdays around here. I've been kind of falling off. But the notion of wearing a bow tie has to do connected with this notion of black nationalism. I know a lot of people didn't realize that. And it's part of the reason why I wear bow ties. Garvey's mentor was Booker T. Washington, who was an educator, famously, literally built the school, the Tuskegee Institute, which is now Tuskegee University, right, in Alabama. And at the time, the fashion was bow ties, and Booker T. Washington wore bow ties. And Garvey, kind of knowing of him in Jamaica, where he was from, came here literally to meet him. Left Jamaica in 1913. Obviously, there were no flights. There was no Caribbean Air at the time. And so it took him a while to get here. And actually, unfortunately, Booker T. Washington passed before he got here. So he never got a chance to meet him. But he had always started wearing bow ties because of him, right? Garvey builds his empire here, which later on is taken down by J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, but we'll talk about that on another day. But one of the people in Garvey's army was somebody who we later on get to know as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so it is the Nation of Islam that actually grows out of Garvey's movement. One of the people who comes out of comes out of the Nation of Islam, of course, is Malcolm X. And so when you see the brothers, in the nation and they're wearing bow ties, that is a direct connection, literally, to Booker T. Washington. But more importantly than the fashion is this notion of nationalism and Pan-Africanism, right? This idea that African people in the diaspora, no matter what country you are connected, right? And that we have a responsibility to each other to help build our own communities in whatever way that we define those things, right? And so that's been an important part of the building of this nation and the building. So we see movies like Rosewood, and when you hear about Black Wall Street, and those dynamics get built out of people like Booker T. Washington, Garvey, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and Malcolm X. And so as I close, I want us to also understand that we are making history as we are living history. That history is nothing but the record of human events. And so in this moment, we stand here as part of history. And certainly we've seen a lot of history over our time here in New York State, particularly in New York State politics, where many of us had the opportunity to serve under the first black governor in the state of New York, David Paterson. I had a chance to work a number of years for the first African-American elected statewide, which was H. Carl McCall when he was the state controller. We now have African-American woman as Attorney General, Letitia James. We have an African-American lieutenant governor. We're actually now on our 4th African-American lieutenant governor, believe it or not, right? From Basil Patterson to David Paterson to Brian Benjamin, who was a part of this body, and now Antonio Delgado, right? I remember coming in this body 20 years ago, we used to talk about, 3 men in the room. Now 3 men in the room are 2 women and a black guy, right? And that didn't happen by accident. It happened because of the work of the people of our great state. And we have an African-American speaker in the assembly in the personage of Carl Hastie, and certainly our leader, Andrea Stewart Cousins, both first woman and first African-American woman to lead a legislative body here in our great state. We have now our 2nd black mayor, right? If you think in the history, and we talk about how liberal New York City is, we've only had 2 black mayors. And again, we recognize and honor our mayor, Eric Adams, who was is a former member of this body. But as you're a member of the Senate, you're always a member of the Senate. We have, only our first black public advocate in Jumaane Williams, first black woman to be speaker in Adrienne Adams, a lot of Adams. That's a good name to have, apparently, right? And so the history that we talk about is huge here. And we currently now have more African-American women serving in the state legislature than any time in our history. And in fact, so many that we actually are one of the highest numbers of black women serving in any legislature in our country at any time in the history of our country. We are living history right this moment. And so we should understand how that has contributed into the way that we are moving as a country. And it's really those dynamics that you see here on the state level and the local level that have now contributed to us having a African-American woman as the vice president. And for the first time having an African-American woman as a Supreme Court justice. And then also where many of us are excited about having Hakeem Jeffries, the first African-American to lead a legislative body on the federal level, who, by the way, was a classmate of mine in high school. Right? Great things are coming out of Brooklyn. Let's wait. I'm a little stunted, don't blame over, but other people are coming along there. And so all of this has become part of our great history. And so understand that the Negro first of the past is part of that history. The great movements that developed this country is part of that history. That the people who are serving now, who are doing things even in this moment for the very first time, are part of that history. And certainly each one of the narratives that make up the stories of each one of our families are part of that African-American history. And all of those things are the building blocks that make up, part of the building blocks that make up our American history. And so I want to thank you, Mr. President, for this moment. I want us to remember that all of us are the people who were here before, we're here the day before yesterday. And we're going to continue to be here the day after tomorrow. So as we celebrate this month, all of us must rededicate ourselves not just to learning this history, but bringing good into the world and letting no good be lost. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Parker. Senator Myrie on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Professor Parker, for walking us through some of the history. I love being black. I love being black. There is nothing else I'd want to be. I am grateful to God that I was made black. So we are celebrating our history this month, and there's a lot to be celebrated, as we just heard, and as we will hear from some of my colleagues. But the unfortunate reality is that history, as we know, repeats itself, and the history of black people in this country continues to repeat itself up until this day. And I'd be remiss if I did not bring up Tyree Nichols, brutally murdered at the hands of law enforcement. And for those of us who are black, it is a complicated thing to watch because it is both hurtful and devastating and not at all surprising. Because we see it over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Even in my own personal history, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, I went to join my constituents to protest, and I was pepper sprayed, assaulted, arrested, even with a bright neon shirt that had Senator Myrie on the back. So my title did not protect me from our history. The incident was investigated. The CCRB just came up with the ruling, and the officer was exonerated, even with video evidence, even with what the world saw happened. So I stand here with very conflicted feelings because we have much to celebrate, but we have much, much, much more work to do. And when I say we, I'm not talking about black people, because we live, we exist, we do the work. I'm talking about the systems in our country that continues to harm, continues to deprive, continues to suppress the beauty and magic of being black. So I'm gonna keep loving being black. I'm gonna keep enjoying the company of my black brothers, my black sisters, my black people. And I'm gonna continue to fight until the day where we are surprised, when we are shocked that our people are being killed in the streets. Where we are shocked when we're not being successful. So I proudly vote in support of this resolution to uplift our history and to look to our future. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Myrie. Senator Lanza on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Parker and I, we go back a long ways. And I always enjoy listening to him speak, even on a getaway day. And one of these days, I'm going to enroll in Dr. Parker's class. He reminds us of so much that is so important whenever he speaks about Black History Month. He reminds us that we can all learn from each other, that we all have the power to teach, but more importantly, we have the power and the capacity to learn and to advance and improve. And I thank him for that. And one of the things I'm always struck by when he talks about Black History Month is when he reminds us that present-day science believes and/or has proven that we all descend from the same woman. who resided in Africa, which means we all have, every one of us, the same great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. And that restores my hope whenever I am reminded of that fact, but it also saddens me because we live in a world, more than ever perhaps, when there are so many who want us to forget that fact. There are so many, and too many, politicians, college professors, media pundits, and people in general who would rather we forget that we are all truly, as proven scientifically, brothers and sisters. They would rather divide and conquer and oppress. They would rather use hate than love. And that is truly, I believe, what is keeping we from really achieving what we can achieve. And so, Dr. Parker, Teacher Parker, Senator Parker, thank you for reminding us that we all have and hail from one mom, and that we are all brothers and sisters. And if we remember that, not just one day a year, but every day, I think we would all, black and white, Asian, Latino, and every child under the sun, be better for it.
Thank you, Senator Lanza. Senator Bailey on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, the teacher, Parker. You know, KRS-One, famous hip-hop artist, is also known as the teacher. We'll get back to KRS-One. Rest in peace to Tyree Nichols. We lay him to rest on the first day of Black History Month, which is, as Senator Myrie mentioned, that cruel irony of being black. And it sometimes it's hard, but as they said, there's nothing better than being black. I was black before I got elected. I'll be black after I got elected. My blackness is beautiful. The blackness of our people is beautiful, no matter what hue you are, Mr. President. My blackness, our blackness, is strength. James Baldwin in 1961 was asked by a radio host about being black in America, and he said, "To be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a state of rage almost all of the time, and in one's work. And part of the rage is this: it isn't only what is happening to you, but it's what's happening all around you, and all of the time in the face of the most extraordinary and criminal indifference. Indifference of most white people in this country and their ignorance. Now, since this is so, it is a great temptation to simplify the issues under the illusion that if you simplify them enough, people will recognize them. I think this illusion is very dangerous because, in fact, this isn't the way it works. A complex thing can't be made simple. You simply have to try to deal with it in all its complexity and hope to get that complexity across. James Baldwin said that in 1961, but he could have said it yesterday. And I know many of us have heard the beginning of that quote, but I don't know if we've heard that full quote in its context. We've heard about the rage, but where does the rage come from, Mr. President? Where does the frustration come from? It comes from seeing televised murders. It comes from wondering, damn, am I next? I don't think people understand that when many of us see those things, it takes you to a point, man, you know, this really could happen to me. This traffic stop, it really could happen to me. This interaction, this really could happen to me. Well, why do you run? Well, we run because we don't have faith that if we are in the grasp, that we're going to be treated fairly. Why do we run? Now, running is a literal and a metaphoric thing in this context, Mr. President. We're running towards glory. You know, I spoke about sampling of hip-hop during MLK Day. And if you've heard this song by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, it's called The Message. Melly Mel is the modern day Baldwin in that when he says, don't push me, cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how we keep from going under. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. You know, it's the first day of Black History Month, and I live through the lens of my daughters, and I promise my oldest, this was her idea. Her Black History Month topic was the history of hip hop. The history of hip hop. So we came up with a trivia game. And we talked about a couple of things, most notably where the birthplace of hip hop was, Senator Comrie. The BX. Also, the location of the first hip hop museum scheduled to open up in 2024. And I got a chance to be at the Hip Hop Museum where we're announcing some funding this past Sunday. And I got to be around some legends. The teacher, KRS-One. So now, back to my oldest, her rap name is GB Gold. And my youngest, Karina, Giada is GB Gold, and Karina, her rap name is Control C. They're part of the culture. And when I met KRS-One, KRS-One said something. He said, rap is something you do, but hip hop is something you live. And hip hop has only not helped to raise me, but hip hop has been that, like our flair, our alarm system, our rapid response team to societal unrest or injustice. Sam Cooke wrote Change is Gonna Come because he was denied accommodations at a hotel. Papoose, the rapper, took the Sam Cooke beat from Change is Gonna Come in response to Sean Bell being shot at 50 times in Queens. Rapid response team. Fight the Power by Public Enemy. One of the greatest works of art in hip hop history. It defined the movie Do the Right Thing. Now, in Do the Right Thing, remember a couple things happened. Rady Raheem was brutally murdered. But before he was murdered, he was silenced. The music that he carried around, his boombox, he was silenced. So, fight the power. You know, Self-Destruction by Boogie Down Productions. One of the first rap videos I remember watching on Video Music Box. Spoke about the societal ills and the response that we needed to be better as a society to each other. The aforementioned KRS-One and Boogie Down Productions had a song called You Must Learn, where he breaks down so many black leaders that we haven't heard of. And he says, because black and white kids both take shorts. When one doesn't know about the other one's culture, ignorance swoop down like a vulture. Because you don't know that you ain't just a janitor because you never learned about Benjamin Banneker. A billion black man that invented the almanac. Can't you see where KRS-One is coming at? With Eli Whitney, Haile Selassie. Granville Woods made the walkie-talkie. Lewis Latimer approved on Edison. Charles Drew did a lot for medicine. Garrett Morgan made the traffic lights. And Harriet Tubman freed the slaves at night. Madam C.J. Walker made the straightening comb. But what you won't know if you weren't shown. You won't know unless you're shown. That's why this month is important. And even if it's 1 month, we can take the lessons that we learn from this month and take them over time. And, you know, at one point, they said black people couldn't play quarterback, Mr. President. They said that we were mentally inferior, and they tried to, and they said, no, you played in high school, you played in college, no, but you're going to play receiver. They blackballed Colin Kaepernick. I got my Colin Kaepernick Uptowns on right now, Mr. President. But in the first time in the history of the NFL, we have 2 black quarterbacks facing off in the Super Bowl. From being told that you can't understand the playbook. They used to say that, Mr. President. They said that black men couldn't understand the playbook because it was too complex. That they didn't understand the routes, or they didn't understand the mechanics of the offense. At the greatest stage in the world, the highest level of competition, we have 2 black men in the Super Bowl. And I think that it's kind of awesome that we had a mini huddle a little while ago. And when you think about how black men and black women have been disenfranchised so much, the committees that we are in charge of, the committees that we get to lead in this great body, things that have historically disenfranchised, we now have the power to be a part of the change. We are our ancestors' wildest dreams, Mr. President. You know, 2004, then Senator, future President Barack Obama, he had a legendary DNC speech, but he came out to the song by Curtis Mayfield and the Impressions, Keep On Pushing. Keep on pushing. I've got to keep on pushing. I can't stop now. Move up a little higher, some way, somehow, because I've got my strength, and it don't make sense not to keep on pushing. We got to keep on pushing for the ancestors, for the current day, but most importantly, for the future. Not just for my daughters, but the generations that we can't even foresee. Generations that didn't foresee an ASC, a Speaker Hasty, a Hakeem Jeffries, a Tish James, an Eric Adams, an Adrian Adams, Crystal Peoples-Stokes. These are things that we couldn't imagine. We couldn't imagine that even 10 years ago. Even 10 years ago, 1 decade ago, you couldn't imagine we didn't see all of these black folks in positions of power. Darcel Clarks and Vanessa Gibsons and, man, it's something to be here. I don't take this for granted. I do not take this opportunity for granted. As a close, Public Enemy said it takes a nation of millions to hold us back. That was their second album. And I dare to say, Mr. President, we can't be held back anymore. Happy Black History Month.
Thank you, Senator Bailey. Senator Comrie on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's hard to follow such eloquent speakers, but I'm going to try. Good morning, colleagues. I'm proud to be here today to talk about Black history, and I want to thank our leader, Andrea Stewart Cousins, and our Professor Parker, for inspiring all of us to denote the issues and majesty of Black history and Black culture. You know, as I want to chronicle and give voice and resonance and significance to the immense pioneering and worthy contributions of African Americans over the past 4 centuries, it is not only necessary from the standpoint of understanding the past, but even more critical for inspiring the future. Black history, as we all know, is not confined to the history books. As was said by my earlier speakers, Black history is happening every day and every moment. We all have an opportunity to impact all of the people around us by how we act towards each other, by how we treat our children, and how we educate our children by our deeds, by our actions, and by our responsibilities. Black history encompasses the virtues and values we bring to spaces like this. Black history informs and animates our advocacy and our activism today. There are many, many important avenues that advocacy and activism can take. I'm going to talk about a couple. But first, I want to just let us all continue to hold the families of Tyree Nichols, the families of the people in Buffalo that were shot down this year by a young man that was never taught civics in our schools, and understand that we have a responsibility to change that dynamic. We should never allow for civics not to be taught in our schools starting in this curriculum year. We should never have a student in New York State not understand the history and majesty of a state that was developed to encompass immigrants, to allow the immigrants to come to New York and to understand that the immigrant life in New York is something that everybody, whether you were Italian in the 50s, whether you were Irish in the 30s, whatever your timeline is, we are all immigrants to this country. We are all immigrants to New York State. There's only people that are born in the last 2 generations can say they were New York State born. We should not have a school system that is not making sure that there's multiculturalism taught in our schools, to where we have young people that are being taught by their phones and understanding that they think they need to go shoot somebody because they don't have an appreciation of what the majesty of New York State is. We have to now focus on making sure that multiculturalism and that the entire budget reflects what this state needs to make sure that all people in this state get an opportunity to benefit from this New York State budget. And I'm going to take from Black history to budget, because the governor in a couple of minutes is talking about her budget. She's going to talk about her budget, and I want to make sure that this year, more than ever, we create an opportunity to ensure that there's multiculturalism reflected through the entire budget, that minorities can bet a higher than the 3% share that they're getting out of procurement, out of state agencies, that they can do better than contracting than the 5% that they're getting across the board in contracts. We as legislators need to do better for our entire state. We need to make sure that upstate gets the opportunities that they need to improve the roads, to develop businesses, to continue to make sure that our manufacturing in upstate gets done, that our farming gets done, and that we can allow multiculturalism through upstate. We need to make sure that this state and this budget reflects the needs and concerns of everyone here. Everyone that lives in this state, even the asylum seekers that have come here to try to find a better life. We need to use this moment in Black history to remember that we are all one people. As Senator Lanza said, my good friend and colleague that I've been working with for a couple of years now, since we were in the city council together, we understand that at the end of the day, we're here to try to do better for our districts. We're here to try to create opportunities for everyone to be uplifted so that we can be proud of our children, we can be proud of our schools, we can be proud of the opportunities to bring new business, new idea, new technology, but we can also make sure that we have inclusivism. Let me slow down. I'm getting excited about our opportunities. I'm getting excited about what we can do in this budget to create opportunities for every New Yorker in New York State to be more inclusive than ever before, because we have more people that are woke. And my new class of members that are here and the members that are already here understand at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. A more inclusive New York with opportunities so that we can never be embarrassed nationally with an incident in Buffalo again, that we can have something to do for our young people by creating after-school programs in every junior high school and high school in the state so that our kids don't get out of school at 1 o'clock and they're trained by their cell phones, that they're getting educated by people that want to embrace them because we don't have schools open, we don't have positive things for them to do. We got to give our children positive things to do so they're not educated by TikTok. We got to change that opportunity. And in this New York State budget that I hope the governor brings up will be inclusive, will be opportunity, will celebrate not just Black history, but the history of this state to make our state better. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Comrie. Senator May on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. A lot of tough acts to follow here. But I want to go back to what Senator Myrie said about how history keeps repeating itself and talk a little bit about how controversies over the teaching of African American history keep repeating themselves. When the Civil Rights Act passed in 1964, a lot of states' boards of education started looking for new textbooks that were more inclusive, that would be able to teach their students about American history in a more forthright and truthful and complete way. And my grandfather was a professor of American history at the time, and my grandmother was a school teacher and social worker, and they collaborated on a new textbook. of American history that really made an effort to cover slavery and Reconstruction and Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Movement and a lot of other aspects of American history that had been left out of textbooks before. This textbook was adopted in the California schools in 1967 when I was 10 years old, and my grandparents, whom I adored, started receiving death threats. White mothers started pulling their kids out of history class in 8th grade so they wouldn't have to learn about Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. My grandparents died about 30 years ago, and I miss them all the time, but part of me is really glad they're not here. To see this controversy rearing its ugly head again, to see someone who's probably going to be a candidate for president in the next election outlawing AP African American history in his state, to see the kinds of vitriol that we are seeing all across the country at school board meetings, in efforts to take books out of libraries, on cable news and talk radio about how somehow dangerous it is to teach our children about African American history. I wish every child could hear the speeches we've heard today and hear the beauty, the richness, the passion, the power of African American history in this country. And I hope that this month, this African American History Month, will bring some of that to kids all across our country. I proudly support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator May. Senator Sanders on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've heard it all. You've heard we've gone everywhere from discussion of the budget to hip hop to the many facts that the professor has given us. We've gone to hear from the other professor, Professor Lanza. He teaches at the University of Staten Island, I believe. He spoke of the universal nature of Black history. And it is a universal nature, but it's more than that. It has to be remembered that Black history is American history, and American history is Black history. You cannot separate the two. Just trying to, as we're seeing down in Florida, is a perversion of American history. It's an insult to American history, akin to a book burning that he's trying to do. And I'm speaking about Governor DeSantis. It's a perversion of American history that every American should stand up and say, you know what, we're going to tell the truth, whether it's lovely or ugly or whatever, but it all helped get us here. This nation is a nation that's not finished. We're on a journey somewhere. And what we do around this table, these tables right here, is part of the history of this great nation. We're going to someplace better. It may be painful, it may be something, but we're going to someplace better. Let me show you just some examples, one or two examples of the choices that all Americans will have to make over the question of our own history, the question of history. In 1921, which was not a good year for many people, especially for Black people, down in Houston, Texas, there was a Klan rally taking place, and it had more than 20,000 people in it. And the speaker was late. So the MC was joking around, trying to kill some time, and he said, "Is there anyone in here who wants to speak against the Klan?" The whole place started laughing, laughter, and until one white guy strode through the aisles, went up on the stage, and for the next 20 minutes, blasted the Klan and said that what they had was nothing to do with America, etc. All of these things, my friends, are part of American history, a part of American history that we need to teach, we need to celebrate. All was not in the history of the Klan. Many whites took a very positive position, and that needs to be celebrated too. Black history is American history. American history cannot be divorced from black history, no matter how many times the book burners want to do it. We have choices. My last example, my friends, we all have seen this picture of Rosa Parks. She's on a bus, there's folk are about to arrest her. There were two white folk who were finally on that bus. Two choices now. One of them was a bus driver, James Blake. And his position was the rules are the rules, and he's happy about enforcing the rules. Everybody knows orders are orders, and they must be followed. And he was happy to push through segregation. But there was another picture. If you look at that picture carefully, there's another white guy sitting in back of Rosa Parks. Silent, he doesn't get much credit. He's sitting there to make sure that she survives the incident. He didn't plan on it. He was not part of that. He was just a good American who happened to be white in this case, who said, you know what? I'm not going to sit and let injustice take place. I'm simply not going to do it. And he stayed, and maybe that's why we hear of Rosa Parks today. She could have been killed. He stayed to make sure he gets no credit. America will always have this choice. You will always have a choice of you can be silent and let things happen, or you can say, you know what, not on my watch. Not on my watch. Maybe I couldn't stop stuff 100 years ago, 200 years ago, but I'd be dang if I let injustice take place today. And so therefore, these days and this type of history is good because it gives us all a chance to learn a little bit more about the other, whoever that is. I haven't found the other yet. But it allows us to find a little bit more so we can and take upon ourselves the idea that out of many comes one. That is what we say about America, is it not? Out of many comes one, that all of us have the ability to get up there and finally say, we are going to a greater America, kicking and screaming maybe, happy and at other points, but we're going to get there. And I conclude right before we hear from my esteemed colleague, Senator Kennedy, who can never say it the best way, so he continues. Langston Hughes once said it this way. Now that certainly, my friends, that certainly came out wrong. It certainly,
Good luck.
it was aimed to be a compliment. Maybe I should have just said what Langston Hughes said, because he didn't mess up, and I did. Langston Hughes was speaking about America, and he said, America, I just want America to be America for everybody. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Forgive me, Brother Kennedy, if it's possible.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. We'll see how Senator Kennedy does. Senator Kennedy, on the resolution.
Very much, Mr. President. Well, first of all, I have to start by thanking my colleague, Senator Sanders, for that wonderful compliment. But in all honesty, I'm so honored to stand here among all of my colleagues, both sides of the aisle, to honor and celebrate Black history with this resolution. I want to thank our great historic leader, Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, for bringing this to the floor. For all of my colleagues that have spoken thus far, Senator Parker, you're always fun to listen to. It's always educational. Always learn a little something more. Senator Myrie, thank you for those profound words. Senator Comrie, Senator Bailey. You know, I can't rap like Senator Bailey, unless, of course, the cameras are off. I can't dance like Senator Parker, unless, of course, my friend, Miss Barbara Glover, teaches me back home in Buffalo for the Dancing with the Stars. Thank you again. I did know what you meant, Senator Sanders. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's a good thing. But you know, and Senator Lanza, thank you for those words. You know, we stand here and we're talking about Black History Month, celebrating Black history, and talking about it being American history, which it is, talking about it being global history, which it is. I think it's personal for all of us. It's personal for me as an Irishman. Today, we not only celebrate the beginning of Black History Month, but today is St. Bridget's Day in Ireland. And actually, this year will be the first year in the history of Ireland that they will officially celebrate St. Bridget's Day. St. Bridget, a millennial and a half ago, just after St. Patrick, was a patron saint of Ireland as well, and today we celebrate that day. I think it's fitting because as we think about Black history, I think about Black history as it relates to Irish history. In my own personal history, the Irish that came across the ocean in the oppressed state only to be yet oppressed here again, and have raised ourselves up much like the African American people in this great country have raised themselves up. But the indelible connection between Irish history and Black history cannot be underestimated. For example, in 1845, at 27 years old, Frederick Douglass crossed the Atlantic to seek respite in Ireland. And in Ireland, he befriended Daniel O'Connell, the great Irish emancipator. And Frederick Douglass went through the great country of Ireland in Cork, in Belfast, in Dublin, in Waterford, and other areas of the country, talking about the scourge of slavery in this country, raising attention, raising funds, and raising support against slavery in this country, and befriending the great Daniel O'Connell. Frederick Douglass is still celebrated today in Ireland. Sadly, in my estimation, more so than he's celebrated here in our own country, and even here in our own state, which is why I have a bill to celebrate Frederick Douglass, creating the Frederick Douglass Heritage Trail in this state. You know, when Frederick Douglass escaped slavery in Maryland, where did he go? He came to Chambers Street in the great city of New York, in the great state of New York. He eventually made his way west, into Rochester, into Buffalo, and quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the greatest American heroes ever to live. And we need to celebrate Frederick Douglass more so than we do. And I think that is incumbent upon all of us to continue to tell his story. You know, Douglass, whose life started in slavery, who found freedom, and then rose to be a confidant of one of the greatest presidents, if not the greatest president to ever live, Abraham Lincoln, lived up into his 90s. His book from 1845 that he wrote, The Diary of a Slave, the narrative of Frederick Douglass, the words that he wrote over 175 years ago still ring true today. If you haven't read it, do yourself a favor. Give it a read. You will learn about society today, sadly. And being from Buffalo and the great movement that started, the civil rights movement that started out of our great city in Buffalo, that we celebrate in this great state of New York, the NAACP, the precursor to that, the Niagara Movement, over a century ago, started in Buffalo, with Reverend Nash, the Nash House, the historic structure still exists today. We're helping to build out, pull up, and tell the story of the history of Buffalo, of New York, of America, that started right underneath our feet. The Michigan Street African American Heritage Corridor, the Michigan Street Baptist Church. Proud to say the state has just announced funding to support the Michigan Street Baptist Church to sustain that structure for generations, hopefully centuries to come. The black-owned radio station, WUFO, Sheila Brown in downtown Buffalo. The Freedom Wall. I could go on and on and on about the history in Buffalo, the history we celebrate, and the tradition that we want to continue to tell. But I also want to put that up against where we are as society. Senator Comrie, in his beautiful words, mentioned the lives that were stolen from us on May 14th. Where 10 beautiful people, because of the color of their skin, living in our community, were massacred because of a hate-filled, racist terrorist who reminded us of the underbelly of this country, reminded us of where we came from in this country, of how the African people came to this country over 400 years ago on those slave ships, and the work we still have to do. So when Senator May talks about education, I agree. When my staff member, head of diversity and inclusion, Zanetta Everhart, whose son was shot on May 14th through the neck, and by the grace of God survived, the only black survivor that day, has started a book drive on diversity and inclusion for our young people. And over 15,000 books were donated by generous people from across the globe to that book drive. And it continues to tell the story of each other, of humanity, of society, of what makes us good as a people. About 5 years ago, I had the wonderful opportunity to go to Belfast in the north of Ireland and listen to former President Bill Clinton speak when he was receiving an award at Queen's University. And when he stood up to speak, the choir began singing Danny Boy. And President Clinton began singing with them. And he had tears coming down his face. Now, we all know the wonderful orator President Clinton is. We've all seen him on his feet. He's second to none as far as I'm concerned. Just extraordinary speaker. And he got up, and I gotta believe it was ad-lib. I'm sure it was. He starts talking about Danny Boy and the humanity of it all and where we all come from. And he starts telling the story about when he was in the Oval Office. One day, he got a report that said that the $2 billion they had invested in the study of the human genome resulted in the findings that all of us share the same DNA. Going back to what Senator Parker mentioned, Alice, great-grandma Alice. And he said, when I saw Hillary, I said, Hillary, we studied the human genome, and we're all connected. We all go back to sub-Saharan Africa. And she said, Bill, we didn't need to spend $2 billion of taxpayer money for me to tell you you're a Neanderthal. And he said, yeah, but know what's great? So are you. The point is, we're all connected. We're all part of that same humanity. It is imperative that we all lift each other up. It's imperative that we all tell each other stories. It's imperative that we remind each other as we start Black History Month that yes, we are living this shared history. We are all a part of Black history in this country, in this state, in our respective communities, especially here in New York State, the birth of the Civil Rights Movement in many ways, and in the global community. And once again, I want to thank my colleagues for all of their words, their passion, their vision, and their leadership. I want to thank you all for your indulgence. And I'm truly honored and privileged to stand here to support this resolution honoring Black history. With that, Mr. President, I vote aye.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Senator Ramos on the resolution.
So much, Mr. President. I too rise to celebrate Black history. I love being Latino. One of the major reasons I love being a Latina is because we come in every single shade. But unfortunately, some of our families don't necessarily appreciate and value that heritage. And so while I rise to celebrate Black history, I also rise today to denounce colorism, particularly in the Latino community. And I want to challenge my peers, my neighbors, my own family members at times who I've heard throughout my lifetime say things like, no te cases con un negro, don't marry a Black person. Hay que mejorar la raza, we have to improve our race. These are all very specific racist things to say. And it is the racism in our own families that we have to root out first in order to make sure that we are putting forth a much more inclusive society. And I know that that can be a very taboo and hard conversation to have, but it is one that is necessary in every single family. Because the truth is that Latino heritage owes a great lot to Black Latinos who came to the shores of South America, Central America, the Caribbean, against their will, too. We wouldn't have plátanos, we wouldn't have yuca, we wouldn't have tamarindo, things that so many of us enjoy, if it wasn't not only for their agricultural know-how, but the seeds that they brought with them from Africa. But perhaps my personal favorite contribution of Black people to Latino culture, particularly New York City Latino culture, isn't hip-hop, it's salsa. Salsa wouldn't be possible without the Congo, without so many instruments that converged with people from Cuba, from Puerto Rico, from Colombia, on the streets of New York City to put forth a different sound for all Latinos and all people to enjoy. I am very proud to represent the most diverse district in the country. I always point that out. It includes two very strong and historic Black communities. One of homeowners called East Elmhurst, right outside of LaGuardia Airport, with a very involved community, including the Ditmars Boulevard Association, my neighbors who so valiantly fought against an air train that was going to serve the airport across the street from where they live, which, by the way, took away their beaches. That was beachfront property that was taken away from them during the era of redlining. Because they had been their needs for transportation continue to be ignored by the state of New York. We're talking about a three-fare zone neighborhood, the one where Malcolm X lived. Yes, the movie is wrong. The house that got cherry bombed was not in Harlem. It was in East Elmhurst, Queens, where Malcolm X's house was cherry bombed. Thank you. It is a very important part of the history that every single child in my district should learn. Louis Armstrong lived in North Corona. His house is there for everybody to visit, to celebrate, to listen to amazing jazz concerts over the summer. I have the Langston Hughes Library on Astoria Boulevard and 100th Street, which this body, I am so thankful to all of my colleagues who helped us secure funding in the budget to make sure that we can continue to teach Langston Hughes' history and so much African history to our neighbors. Jimmy Heath, Harry Belafonte, all of these amazing musicians and leaders have lived in my district. And we don't get to talk about it enough. And I fear that perhaps if we continue to hear allegations against the teaching of Black history in America, that children like mine won't know and won't learn to respect their fellow human beings. You know, today in the New York Times, there's a story that talks about how Black families are leaving New York State. No, it's not billionaires, it's not the rich. It's people who are fighting to be able to buy a home in New York State and can't do it. They're not earning enough money. Discrimination continues to run amok all over our state, especially when it comes to home ownership. We all remember those Newsday articles from Long Island a few months and years ago. There's a lot of work for this body to do to ensure that Black people are respected and afforded the opportunities that white people have been afforded since the beginning, since they stole the land that we stand on. So I thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to speak today to honor my Black neighbors, my Black colleagues, and all Black people. And I vote aye on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ramos. Senator Clear on the resolution.
This is a great day. Happy Black History Month, everyone. I thought that I could not keep my seat representing one of the most historic Black communities in the world, Harlem. It is the Mecca of the African diaspora. I sit in the seat formerly held by the first Black woman ever elected to the state Senate, Constance Baker Motley. And it is with great pride that I come and serve here every day. I am thankful to our great leader, Andrea Stewart Cousins, for bringing this resolution, to all my colleagues who have so eloquently spoken today from all the universities. We heard a lot today about the history we don't want to repeat. Facts, that's important. The history that we have to teach, that's important. And I'm not trying to rap, Senator. But it's also the history that we have to preserve. It's the history that we have to protect, and some of the history that we have to undo. When we're in this chamber, we have to think about the long-lasting effects of racism that continue to this very day. We have to think about the long-lasting effects of redlining, the long-lasting effects and continuation of mass incarceration, the long-lasting and continuing effects of health and healthcare disparities. We have a chance to make another history in this chamber. We have a chance to make another history in this budget. We have a chance to make another history, and not a history that continues environmental atrocities against Black communities, the dumping of bus depots, hazardous waste plants. We have a chance in this body, with every single decision we make, with every single piece of legislation that comes forward, to make it right, to stop, to end those disparities. I appreciate Senator Ramos for bringing up Blacks leaving the state of New York. They're leaving my district by the thousands. A historical Black community leaving by the thousands, tens of thousands, not because they want to. Harlem is a beautiful place. I am so proud to be from there. The history we've given to this city, the history we've given to the world, the Apollo Theater, the Arturo Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, the strides that have been made, every leader from Nelson Mandela, Thurgood Marshall, Malcolm X, they have all been in Harlem. But blacks are leaving because they can't afford to live there. They are being pushed out by aggressive and rapid gentrification. They're being pushed out because they can't afford to own anything. Black businesses are pushed out because they can't afford the capital. They can't afford the rent. So when we are doing this work, let us remember Black history and how we can change it by protecting and creating affordable housing, by protecting and preserving and landmarking some of the great institutions and buildings that exist in Harlem, where so much has taken place, including the planning of the Great March on Washington. Let us make sure that we are funding our schools equitably and appropriately, and making sure that every child gets a good education and a quality education in every part of this state. So with that, I just ask you to protect the beauty of Black history, the beauty of Harlem, and I gladly vote aye on today's resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Clear. Senator Brisport on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Parker, for introducing this resolution, to my colleagues for your wonderful statements. Every time of year when we celebrate Black History Month, I am reminded of the deep and inseparable connection between racism and capitalism. And as a proud Black socialist state senator, I reflect on the fact that Black people were brought to this country as capital, and that slavery was capitalism in action, and that Black people were commodified, bought and sold on markets, used as collateral at banks to enrich a select group of people, because that's what capitalism does. It creates winners and a lot of losers. And I'm reminded that the attacks on Black people to enrich a few people under capitalism continued after, under sharecropping, Jim Crow, redlining, for-profit prisons, for-profit policing. These things, the ripple effects, all under capitalism. And I'm reminded that any journey towards ending racism in this country must come with the dismantling and abolition of a system that disenfranchises so many to make just a few very, very wealthy. And I urge us all to understand that as we know now that it is wrong to commodify bodies, we must also work to decommodify healthcare, decommodify housing, decommodify energy, prevent education from being privatized. Onwards and upwards, together. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brisport. The resolution was previously adopted on January 31st. Senator Serrano.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can we please take up previously adopted Resolution 306 by Senator Webb? Read the resolution title only and recognize Senator Webb on the resolution.
Secretary will read.
Senate Resolution 306 by Senator Webb, memorializing Governor Kathy Hochul to proclaim February 1st, 2023 as Girls and Women in Sports Day in the state of New York.
On the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also, happy Black History Month. I want to thank all my colleagues most certainly for sharing their sentiments. And as I was listening, I was also reflecting on my own journey to this seat, most certainly, and just thinking about my own history and also being the first African American and first woman to represent my district in the Southern Tier here in this body. And so I most certainly appreciate Senator Parker's comment around that we are living history, but more importantly, what are we doing with what we know to make things better for the future? And so as I rise to speak on this also great resolution, recognizing girls and women in sports, I want to thank my Senate colleagues, Mr. President, for supporting this resolution, memorializing Governor Kathy Hochul's proclamation stating February 1st as Girls and Women in Sports Day in the state of New York, in conjunction with the observance of National Girls and Women in Sports Day. I am proud to stand today to celebrate the progress that we have made and the work that remains to be done to ensure equity for girls and women in sports. This day was first celebrated in 1987 to commemorate Olympic volleyball player and African-American Florence Jean or Flo Hyman. She was one of the best athletes of her time who unfortunately died of a rare congenital heart disorder at the age of 31. She was an incredible volleyball player. Not only did she serve the ball at speeds of 100 miles an hour, but she was known to have a spike shot at the net that was compared to a slam dunk by Julius Erving, also known as Dr. J, for folks who may know him in that manner. That was before my time. But folks are very familiar. And so when she was not on the volleyball court, and what I found to be equally fascinating about her story and her journey, Hyman worked tirelessly to promote equal representation of women in sports, in addition to fighting for civil rights, lobbying alongside civil rights leader Coretta Scott King for the Civil Rights Restoration Act, and testifying before Congress in favor of strengthening Title IX legislation passed in 1972. 25 years ago, in my district in Tompkins County, Ithaca High School, girls actually made history as the first girls hockey team in New York State. As they fought for access to the ice rink, they used the empowering acronym GREAT, which stands for Girls Really Expect a Team, which is another way of saying that girls should not have to apologize for wanting the same opportunities as their male classmates. I was disappointed to learn recently that they canceled this year's hockey season due to COVID-related dips in participation. However, I hope we will see a return of this historic team next year, as school-based teams, as we all know, provide access to sports like hockey that are most certainly very expensive and traditionally dominated by male athletes and often very exclusionary. And so, in further reflection, 50 years after the passage of Title IX, we are still striving for equitable access to federally funded programs, activities, and other resources. We must ensure that the public and private schools offer equitable sports opportunities to all students, regardless of their gender or race and ethnicity. While it is certainly true that we have made progress, there's much more work to be done to make sure that all girls have access to sports, so we can ensure that the next Flo Hyman does not miss her chance to make her way onto a volleyball court or any other athletic space of her choosing. As those of us who have played sports, and I also recognize some of us are more of the observant category, no judgment, have watched our favorite team play, knows very well that access to sports empowers young athletes, and it builds a sense of teamwork, pride, and accomplishment. And so I'm very happy to stand here today to vote in favor of this resolution, and I hope my colleagues will join me in celebrating girls and women in sports by voting aye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Webb. Senator Mayer on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Webb, for introducing this. And it's so fitting that we're doing it on this day where we've heard these powerful reminders of the importance of Black history. We need to publicly acknowledge some of the extraordinary Black women in the history of sports in our country who not only broke the gender barrier before and after Title IX, but clearly broke a race barrier, but their stories are not told. You know, we know about Serena Williams and Simone Biles, but Althea Gibson, Florence Joyner, Wilma Rudolph, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, and Flo Hyman. These are women who were so excellent in their sport and their craft that they were national leaders. And that's part of the story that we must tell as part of the full story of American success and failures. But these women were the epitome of success. And I think it's particularly important that we talk about the value of sports for all women and girls. You know, the elements of sports that men have traditionally enjoyed and celebrated, the ability to be publicly competitive, to have a team of people that you work together with, to enjoy physical activity, and to learn the benefits of winning and, yes, losing. These are the things that men have always enjoyed through sports, and for so many years, until Title IX, 50 years ago, when we see the value of changing laws, women were really discouraged, if not prevented, from enjoying. So we celebrate today the National Girls and Women in Sports Day, and aptly coinciding with this incredibly important Black History Month celebration, which we are reminded today should not be a month-long celebration, but a year-long conversation. And I also want to commend publicly the women's national soccer team in the United States for raising the issue of pay parity in professional sports and finally achieving some victory with the help, I would say, of the men's national team, which did not fight them and understood the benefit. But we have a long way to go to get parity. In the meanwhile, let's celebrate the girls, the young girls, for whom the opportunity to participate in sports will be a life-changing, life-affirming activity. And thank you for letting me speak. I vote aye on the resolution.
Thank you, Senator Mayer. Senator Bailey on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Webb, thank you so much for introducing this resolution. First and foremost, let me say if Brittany Griner was paid what she was owed, if she was paid what she was worth, if she was paid what her basketball legendary skills are worth, she would have never had to go to Russia in the first place. So like, if we're going to talk about pay equity, let's censor pay equity and make sure that women that are exceptional athletes are paid what they're worth. Serena Williams is the greatest athlete of all time. I don't know if you know about, I don't know how you play in a major, the Australian Open, 7 months pregnant, couldn't do it. A man couldn't do that. She's the greatest of all time, not just the greatest tennis player, she's the greatest athlete of all time. But I want to censor this on how far, Title IX has taken us, right? Just recently, on a group chat, a bunch of my friends and I were talking about Breanna Stewart today announced, breaking news, I'm breaking this here in the chamber, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Breanna Stewart is going to sign with the New York Liberty, right? I'm not sure how far you've come in that. The fact that a free agent acquisition in the WNBA is not only noteworthy, but we're having conversations about that, that's a huge deal. Maybe because my friends and I are huge WNBA fans, but I think that shows how far the game has evolved. And it doesn't evolve without the contribution of the women that Senator Webb mentioned and Senator Mayer mentioned. That simply doesn't happen. Over the summer, there was a documentary on New York City point guards called Point Guards. It was by Kevin Durant. As we all know, Mr. President, New York City is the home of the greatest point guards on earth. We make the greatest point guards on earth, without question, right? In that documentary was a point guard that was a guard that went to Riverdale Country School. Her name was Nisha Butler. Nisha Butler was once the all-time scoring, holder in New York State. Not just for women, for men and women. I had the pleasure of meeting Nisha Butler after a DOE town hall the other night, and she's doing work trying to make sure that young women get into STEM and STEAM. And she was like, "It's nice to meet you." I'm like, "No, it's nice to meet you. You are a New York City point guard, Ms. Butler." And I think it's so important to make sure that we censor that women in sports are doing things not just on the court, but representing. Michelle Roberts, black woman from the Bronx, is the president of the National Basketball Association Players Association. She is phenomenal. She is incredible. And she is a woman in charge of a bunch of male professional athletes as their leader in the Players Association. Obviously, there's so far that we have to go in making sure that we give true pay parity and true equity. But I think that conversations like this and resolutions like this, Senator Webb, are critically important to the conversation, and I probably vote out in the resolution. And also, Mr. President, I got to make sure I talk about my daughters. They're hoopers too. They love to hoop. They love to get in the court, and I think that's just a reflection of how far we've come. And they dunk on me in the house all the time. I vote aye.
Thank you, Senator Bailey and Father Bailey. This resolution was previously adopted on January 31st. Senator Serrano.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the request of the sponsors, the resolutions are open for co-sponsorship.
The resolutions are open for co-sponsorship. Should you choose not to be a co-sponsor of the resolution, please notify the desk. Senator Serrano.
Thank you. Can we please go to the reading of the controversial calendar?
The Secretary will ring the bell. Secretary will read.
Calendar number 159, Senate Print 2222 by Senator Harkam, enactment of the Environmental Conservation Law.
Senator Walczak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the sponsor yield for some questions?
Did the sponsor yield?
Absolutely.
And through you, Mr. President, this is a chapter amendment to the 30 by 30 goal that came out of this chamber. Is that right?
It is through you, Mr. President. First, it's great to see you up there. Congratulations. Yeah, this is a chapter amendment to answer the senator's question to the 20 by 30. It's a goal. It's a goal that is a national goal that the state is buying into, preserving 30% of our public lands and waters by 2030.
And through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Absolutely.
Sponsor yields.
So the original bill I noticed passed in May of 2022, May of last year. It required a public hearing schedule to be posted by July of last year. But then I also noticed that it wasn't sent to the governor for her signature until December of last year, much past that deadline. So I'm not surprised to see a chapter amendment come through because it was already past the deadline by the time it was chaptered. Why, though, in this chapter amendment was the public hearing schedule completely removed altogether?
Mr. President, the public hearing schedule for the acquisition of public lands is not removed. It was the public comment, and there is a guarantee of at least one public hearing and other public comment on the goal. So to be clear, Mr. President, we don't want to confuse the current public input process for public acquisition of lands and the parallel legislation on the goals. So if there is ongoing acquisition program that DEC already had. This was meant to just streamline the two to actually ease administrative burden and reduce costs to the state. So for instance, the DEC in my region presented their East of Hudson scoping plan that included the acquisition of some new land for parcels for the state. That required public input. There were 2 public hearings in my district. So if there is an acquisition proposal in any of our districts, there will still be public hearings. The restricted public hearing was just reduced on the goal itself.
Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Absolutely.
Sponsor yields.
You just mentioned in your comments that there will be 1 public hearing still required. When and where will that be?
Is supposed to be, through you, Mr. President, that needs to be scheduled and posted on the DEC website.
And through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Absolutely.
Sponsor yields.
There's a new line here. While the public hearing requirement was stricken from the original bill in this chapter amendment that says including and ensuring meaningful opportunities for public input and involvement. Could that include things in addition to a public hearing, or does 1 public hearing satisfy that requirement?
Through you, Mr. President, that would include email submission of comments. That would include letters of comments, the gathering of public comments in ways, having one public hearing in a certain part of the state is not necessarily adequate for the rest of the state, but we have learned through the pandemic and just through modern technology that it's much easier for comments to be submitted electronically, and some of our constituents prefer to do it the old-fashioned way through mail.
And through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Absolutely.
Sponsor yields.
So the original bill, which passed in May of 2022, also required a report in July of 2023 to the legislature. Why, if this bill was chaptered in last December, I mean, we haven't hit July of 2023 yet, why would the report of the plan need to be pushed, as you're proposing in this chapter amendment, to 2024?
Mr. President, this is, as we said, they're duplication of effort. So DEC already reports on their land acquisition to the legislature already. So to have two separate reports is duplicative. So again, this is just streamlining the process to make it less administratively burdensome and to save the taxpayers money.
Thank you, and understanding you weren't the sponsor of the original bill, I appreciate the explanation. If the sponsor would continue to yield.
Did the sponsor yield?
Absolutely.
Sponsor yields.
In the original legislation that was passed by both houses, and the governor has presented this chapter amendment, there was also a requirement of a report to the legislature. This is a bill that was written by the legislature requiring a report back from the executive at all, and that's been stricken. Why would we amend the chapter to strike the report back to the legislature?
Through you, Mr. President, because those reports, as I explained before, on land acquisition already come to the legislature. So DEC through the Environmental Protection Fund already does land acquisition and land preservation. Of the $400 million budget, about $40 million annually is spent on that, and they report to us and to the governor on those activities.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Borrello. Senator Borrello.
Thank you, Mr. President, and welcome to the dais up there. Would the sponsor yield for a question?
Absolutely.
Did the sponsor yield?
All right, through you, Mr. President, thank you. I debated this bill last year with Senator Kaminsky, although I supported it, and the key takeaway and the key concern of mine, particularly now that you're saying we're going to reduce the public comment to essentially just one meeting for the goals. The question that I asked Senator Kaminsky that I would also like you to answer is that would you consider the land acquisition for the purposes of constructing green energy installations to be conservation or not?
The purpose for this bill of conservation is for, as laid out in the law, things like protection of biodiversity, for protection of aquifer and drinking water, and for carbon sequestration. It doesn't speak to the construction of clean energy.
To continue to yield?
Sponsor yield?
Absolutely.
Through you, Mr. President, thank you. So that's where I'm concerned when you say carbon sequestration. We have a long history in this state of clear-cutting forests that are naturally sequestering carbon to put in place solar panels that get covered with snow and actually don't generate any electricity. I'm concerned that because there's going to be one public hearing on the goals, that goal may shift now, which Senator Kaminsky said was not the intention, to allow for this money and this land acquisition to be spent on acquiring land to clear-cut forests, to attack natural habitats, till we can construct more senseless green energy boondoggle projects. I just want to be clear that we're not going to do this. We're not going to shift to that, because Senator Kaminsky said, no, we are not. That is not the goal. So I want to, as the new sponsor, I would like you to say that you agree that should not be the purpose of land acquisition, land preservation and conservation in New York State.
Through you, Mr. President, no, that is not the intention of the law. That is certainly not my intent. I just, as an aside, I would perhaps disagree with the phrase green energy boondoggle, but we can talk about that off the floor. But really, you know, what we talk about also is resiliency. That's one of the things mentioned in the original law, and resiliency is using nature to protect us from storms, and when you're clear-cutting a mountainside, that is not resiliency. So really, while I am very bullish on clean energy with other legislation, this is about protecting natural habitat.
Mr. President, on the bill.
Senator Borrello on the bill.
First of all, thank you very much for that engagement, and I appreciate your response, and I'm glad it was consistent. I still have concerns if we're only going to have one public hearing on the goals. We saw the Climate Action Council and their ridiculous, unachievable scoping plan that was filled with holes as we discussed it in our public hearing a couple of weeks ago. So I hope we continue to keep this pure and that we do indeed keep this focused on conserving land, because we do need to do that in New York, particularly now that we are taking up thousands and thousands and thousands of acres, particularly in the beautiful upstate area that I live in, to construct these monstrosities that will do nothing, zero, to actually impact greenhouse gas emissions in New York State. So let's keep this one pure at least. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Borrello. Are there any other senators wishing to be heard? Seeing and hearing none, debate is closed. Senator Serrano.
Aye. Upon consent, Mr. President, can you please restore calendar 159 to the non-controversial calendar?
The bill is restored to the non-controversial calendar.
Can you take that up?
Secretary will read. Read the last section.
Section 2, this act take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of law 2022.
Call the roll.
Dabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Senator Harkam to explain his vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Really just one last quick clarification. I want to thank my colleagues for the good discussion. I understand the concern about the reduced public hearing on the goal, but I just want to rest assured that the local public input process for individual land acquisition in our districts remain unchanged. So to the example Senator Borrello gave, if there were land acquisition in his district or in my district, as I referenced before, there will still be a robust public engagement plan. So with that, I vote aye. Thank you.
Senator Harkam. Senator Walczyk to explain. Oh,
Thank
Senator
you.
Harkam in the affirmative. Senator Walczyk to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. To explain my vote, so this is a chapter amendment to a bill that we put forward for land acquisition. That original bill required that there were public hearings across New York State. We've cut that out. We've said, no, since we were late on our homework, and this is practically what happened in the timeline. It was passed by both chambers in May. The delay of the legislature, for no apparent reason whatsoever, was in December to send that bill to the governor's desk. In that time frame, we were supposed to have public hearings, announce them, and have them. Now the chapter amendment is brought before us today to say, well, we didn't announce the public hearings, we're late on our timeline, the governor signed the bill, but with this chapter amendment saying that we're no longer to hear from the public. They could send us an email. We don't want to actually go into the communities where we will be acquiring land to meet these goals for 3030 and hear from the people directly that are impacted by the land that the state will own in their communities. I've got serious problems with that. For that reason, I'll be voting no.
Senator Walczyk to be recorded in the negative. Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 159, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Canzonieri Fitzpatrick, Gallivan, Griffo, O'Mara, Walczyk, Senator White, also Senator Rhodes. Ayes 56, nays 7.
The bill is passed. Senator Serrano, that completes the reading of today's calendar.
Is there any further business at the desk?
There is no further business at the desk.
I move that we adjourn until Monday, February 6th at 3 p.m. with the intervening days being legislative days.
On motion, the Senate stands adjourned until Monday, February 6th at 3 p.m., with intervening days to be legislative days.